Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Financial Griot. It's not the Griot, it's the Griot. So we're out here having a great conversation with our special guests, and we definitely like for you to be in this space where we share our stories, we share our interaction with the world as is, and also ways that we can actually build wealth and really move forward and progress. So along with myself and my two co-hosts, we're always going to have like a special guest here that's going to speak about her experiences. And now we can actually even pair up with some of the things that she's doing and really elevate, her movements, no matter what it is, because in the end of the day, we are family, we are in this space, and we definitely like to have this conversation. With that being said, my name is Lawrence Delva Gonzalez. I'm known as the neighborhood finance guy on the interwebs, and you can find me anywhere when you hit the Google, you just hit Google or something. So I'll pass it over to my lovely co-host named Lovely. Right, Lovely?
Hey, everyone. I'm super excited for this conversation. It's always good to bring other people to get any different perspectives on the financial journey. And so we are happy to have Angel with us today. Sound effects somewhere.
Pew, pew, pew. It's not in our budget, so
I've been doing this for free.
this for free. So hey, what's up, peoples? Everyone who's listening to this episode, I'm one of three of the co-hosts of TFG. My name's Atlanta Elsa, and I'm super excited for this conversation. When LG said elevated again, I'm like, oh Lord, here we go.
Hey, this is all like Toastmasters. When you can fold something that you just said before into something new, I love that.
I'm like, we're not about to bring this into
it's not. It's a good way to segue.
We let that go.
It's a segue. It's tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
So we do have a special guest. We still have a special guest with us, Anjel Mcdonald, who's actually has her own platform. So you can tell us a little bit about yourself, Angel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all. Hi, everyone. My name is Anjel Mcdonald, the founder of RareBird Money. And so it is a blog and I'm on Instagram. And so really speaking a lot to professional millennials that may not have the side hustle yet, may not have the passive income yet, but still want to build wealth through their 9 to 5.
The moment she said like RareBird, I thought Yardbird, so I thought brunch, but that's just me.
How did you get that from brunch?
Hey, I heard RareBird, so
is that a restaurant?
No, that's like,
I'm just trying to understand you. How did you connect that?
Yeah, Yardbird is a restaurant. It's a very prominent. Rich people go to Yardbird. Okay, all right.
I've never heard of it.
Wow.
Me either.
Okay, Angel. So why did you come up with the name RareBird?
So it's actually from Latin, and it's called rara avis. And so it literally means extraordinary being. And so ever since high school, I've been kind of like addicted to, I took Latin in high school. It was weird. Instead of taking, languages that would help me, like Spanish, I took Latin and rara avis, which is rare bird. I loved it. And so I ran with it.
Wow,
that's super cool.
That blew my mind. I was a whole other level. I'm like, a real quick question about Latin. Do you find that there are some commonalities with other Latin Romance languages like French, Spanish, and Catalan, and etc.?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And so that's one of the reasons why, right? I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and you're looking at just understanding language. I first wanted to maybe study etymology, and then doing that, I kind of chose Latin. So you find a lot of commonalities within certain languages, right? You can understand the root of a word through Latin, for English at least. But then, if I hear Spanish, sometimes I don't know what it means. You can kind of pair it together. So that's why the words are so similar. But that it helped me, when it came to like SATs a little bit, but outside of that,
definitely, those Latin prefixes and stuff. It helped me learning medical terminology for my coding certificate.
Yeah.
I had to flex myself there. Like I know different languages, so I just went after she said Latin, I was like, oh shoot, kind of sit up straight.
He leaned in more. He leaned in.
I had to sit up straight. Hey, you can't just hang out here.
That's funny. I love that name too. And when you mentioned about just regular people, because I kind of identify myself as, 9-to-5 CEO, where you can go to work, get a regular paycheck, and still continue to build wealth and enjoy your life too. I think what social media and the internet has really exploited, if you will, is everyone can't be an entrepreneur, or some people may not even have the bandwidth. I see LG with his keyword down there, bandwidth, to even take on a side project or deal with, entrepreneurship levels, if you will. And they just want to live their normal life. And that's okay too. I think there's spaces and people to kind of accept that if you just want to go to work or just perform well in your job, that's fine. There are different levels to get to that financial independence that we all trying to strive to.
Yeah, completely agree. I would just even say, even for me, our way of building wealth in my household has been to increase our income. Now, understandably though, right, labor income is limited, right? And so that's why you have to look at other ways to build it. But I can't teach what myself I've not experienced. And I found that and this is not a shot to these personal finance influencers, but a lot of people are teaching things that they have not yet experienced themselves or have not successfully done. You don't even have to actually successfully do it. Even if you try it and fail it, as long as you try it and put practice to it, I think that there's space for you to teach it, but too many teachers now that actually haven't done something. And so I say to myself, until I have done it, I can't speak to it. And so what I can speak to though is, building a comfortable life from my 9 to 5, and then also increasing our income through corporate work, right? That's where my space is. That's what we do. So that's kind of where I've leaned in my platform.
So what do you do though? What's your profession, or can you share that? Or
Yeah. So I'm a management consultant. I am a vet also. So I used to be an intelligence analyst for the Air National Guard, but I am a management consultant for an IT consulting firm. I've been doing that for 6 years now. And my primary subject or my primary expertise is change management and product marketing.
Nice. And you're doing, so it's basically your husband, and you're basically paired up on this financial literacy journey. How did that start off?
With just me and my husband?
Yeah. How did you get to this point where you decide to, you're having an entire, platform catering to different people and teaching them financial literacy and making sure that they're building wealth. But how do you get there? How do you start from, how do you segue from being a management consultant and all the way to the second side gig that has almost, secondary anything to do with it?
Yeah, no, that's fair. So it first started, with my love of personal finance, right? So I was an econ major in college because I went to college thinking that I was going to change the poverty threshold, right? I was like, nobody's changing this poverty threshold. And if the poverty threshold hasn't changed since the 1960s and 70s, right? In terms of how they calculate it. Right. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to change the world, blah, blah, blah. And so I went into public policy first. And what I realized in public policy is that one, even in the nonprofit space and in public policy, green rules and cash is king. Right. And so, yes, correct. But the way that they I'm just reading Lawrence, but the way that they calculate it hasn't changed. And so when we talk about, minimum wage, you can still make minimum wage full-time and still be in poverty. Calculation, you're still living within poverty. And so I thought that, well, first you actually have to change that calculation for them to change the minimum wage, right? And that's exclusive of keeping up with production or productivity. And so I thought, let me go and change that. Let me go into public policy. I got a public policy fellowship. I realized they didn't make any money. And I was like, okay, so here I am trying to change things and I'm going to be broke. And that was one thing that I realized I did not want to live that kind of lifestyle. So, talking to people, my manager at the time, she was like, hey, Anjel, I know that you love this. What do you like to do? I never knew anything about management consultant. or management consulting. And she said that might be an interesting career for me because she did that herself. And then I saw this article, I think it was on Business Insider, about the minimum income to be happy. And at the time it was like 70,000. And so I said, all right, when I graduate college, the first job I have, it doesn't matter what it's going to be, I will have to make at least $70,000. That was it. I chased money. I know other people, they chase, their passion. My passion would have been public policy, but I would have been broke. And I was like, well, I don't want to be broke more than I love my passion. And so that's really how I got into the space. Then I realized, I don't want to be in debt. And my husband, he taught me when we were dating, he actually started paying off his student debt before I did. And so one thing that he just tried to hone into me was that while I'm still in student debt, they actually, I don't say own, but they have more of my paycheck than I do. And so he was like, we need to get to the point where we're paying off our debt so that we don't owe anyone. And so we went really hard together to pay off our student debt. He paid his off before I did. We were living together, however. And I mean, we were out here in those weekly ads for grocery stores. We were buying the cheapest potatoes. We went hard. All of our furniture was from thrift stores, but we made it fun, so when we had our housewarming, we just asked people to bring books in a bottle. That was it. If you want to bring the bottle, sure, but really just books, right? We would paint ourselves. I think that when you're in those situations and when you actually don't have a lot, you're the most creative. And so we were super creative with things. We ended up going to Thailand for 7 nights, round trip. And the total cost was $1,400. Right. And so we just made sure that if we did do anything, we had enough to pay it off cash. We didn't at all. I can say together we've been together 9 years and living together 7 years. In those total times, we've never gotten into any credit card debt, but that was because we just didn't want to owe anyone. So I think our first avenue into not owing anyone, we, changed our mindset that we were going to own our own selves. And so just pay for ourselves. And so, then you learn, right? So when you love something, you start getting addicted to something, you want to learn more about it. So then I started reading books. I started listening to podcasts, talking to friends. And then after that, that was just, casual conversation of just the subject I loved. I got into the corporate world, and that's when it blew my mind, because I'm having, the same career and job as others. And I'll say white people and some other Eastern Asian people, primarily the people, having these conversations with, and they were just miles ahead of me in terms of personal finance. And that's where I really, really, really fell in love with having these deeper conversations with others. And my friends were like, yo, would you coach me? And that's when I started coaching. I actually stopped coaching for a little while because it really is kind of burnout to do one-on-one coaching unless you're getting paid, the amount that maybe it's worth it to you. So then I started the platform RareBird Money. That was long. But
that was a lot. At least for me, I got a lot out of it, and I think the audience is going to get a lot out of it as well, because it's giving you it's peppering a lot of the background and the ethos behind what you believe in and how you get to this space, and it creates a lot of questions as well, because you're right about the emotional burden sometimes that people that do financial consulting on a one-on-one basis that they go through, because you have to really walk the walk with your client as much as you can, and you're absorbing that blow. You're absorbing every hit, every time they fail. You basically you're like a parent. Parents could watch their kids go to do sports, but they have to kind of be in the game as well mentally. And it does hurt when they don't make it, or it does. You really feel elated when they do make it as well. So there is an emotional burden there.
Well, more so not even the burden, because my clients actually did really well, right? My clients have done super well, but it's not necessarily the burden of, them not succeeding. It's just the time that it takes, because I'm doing research on the side as well for them, right? So I'm looking up the accounts maybe that will help them. I'm looking up certain things that I don't know that they need help with. And so it's that like extra time outside of even the one-to-one that would just take up a lot of my time. And I was kind of like, I don't know if I can keep up with this for the amount of clients that I was having while also still doing my job.
And take care of your kids. You have kids, right?
And I do. Yeah. She's 2 next month.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do have another question again. I think I guess recently I've been seeing a lot of people post about, hey, having separate bank accounts for spouses. How do you, obviously it sounds like you have this one bank account that you share with your husband. And
now we do.
Now you do? Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Which one is better?
I think it depends on trust. And I think it depends on who's managing the money. In my household, I manage our finances. So it's easier for me to manage our finances when we have one. Now we do have our own separate like savings accounts, right? Where we have our own emergency fund account, but I also can see his account. He can see mine. We have those separately, and we have our own like personal checking accounts where they never get larger than like $1,000, these checking accounts. But, if we have certain things that come out of that, we want to pay with that. But I personally think that it's just dependent on your relationship. We did not join accounts until after we were married. And we were together for about 5 years before that. And we had separate accounts. And honestly, that was more me than it was him. He was fine joining accounts. I was like, even though I'm in this relationship, I'm still a pretty like independent woman. I manage my finances myself. I don't know how I'm gonna feel, like joining my accounts with you. And so it was just a conversation that we had to have about if it made sense for us.
Yeah, I think that's a hard thing to do. Me and my wife, we did that prior to getting married back in 2019. We went to the bank. And even at that moment, I was like, all right, let's go do this. I used to be in the Marine Corps. I have no fear, whatever that is. So I go there and I'm sitting there, and you get to a point where you're about to sign everything over, and you're like, oh, this is very heavy pen right now. It's really weighing heavy on my spirit. And it's a lot on her as well as my wife, because she had to basically merge her account to mine. So there's a bit of trust there. A lot of like, I don't know. We just had to get that through because I think it was more powerful for us to have our dollars together than apart. And till this day, she does have her own slush funds, kind of similar to you. I don't really need one because I don't have a lot of needs. but she typically has her own little slush fund on the side, and I'm fine with that as well because less for me to kind of track. So that works for us.
Yeah. And if it works for you, I have friends who they're married and they don't join finances whatsoever. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep it real. It's going to be really hard to budget when you guys don't join finances. I think that if you're looking to budget and like really understand your household budget as a unit, it's much easier to do it with joined accounts than with 2 separate accounts.
And easier to build wealth in a massive way as well.
Facts. Absolutely. It's coming from one pot, right? Our paycheck goes into one account, then we invest. So it's like, I don't have to like move money around. You kind of see it all in one. Agreed.
I'm out here asking all the questions out here from our guests.
No, I was actually thinking through like some of the stuff that was being said. What were some of the emotional components, or are you more one of those people that are black and white? Like you knew you have to do this change, understanding that, hey, I have to make different decisions. What are some key pivotal moments that you can track back to on your financial journey?
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm more black and white with that. And so it really is like the discipline for me, right? Like I know to get to like Z, I have to go. And Lawrence had mentioned this before. It was like, you have to get through the steps. And when I tell you, I kind of, when I set goals, I look at like the end goal first. And then I say, okay, what do I have to do to get there? Right. Now, is that the good way or right way? I don't know, because I'm now trying to change being goal oriented to more systems oriented, because it doesn't serve everything that I do anymore. But absolutely, it was just me knowing, one, it was my like, rather than my like fear, or I wouldn't say it was like scarcity mindset. I just knew I just did not want to live a life in poverty, right? Like I was going to do whatever it took to not only just not even in poverty, but to live paycheck to paycheck, right? I saw that. I grew up in that. I have family still in that. And I was just like, whatever it is I do, if I have to, be upset if I'm going to be miserable poor, well, then let me be miserable trying not to be poor, right? Like there were things that I was just like, I know I was trying to avoid so much. And so then reading really helped me because if I'm going to like absorb education, I prefer reading articles, reading books than like short form videos, right? And at the time, they didn't really have a lot of short form videos like TikTok, like Instagram. So it's a little different than it is now. YouTube was really a good platform, but it was really me just understanding, hey, Angel, you see people who are just like comfortable, right? And that was it to me. It was just like, it wasn't even like they're millionaires. Oh, I don't know if they're millionaires, right? I don't know their finances. But when I was working with people and they just seemed comfortable enough, I literally was like, what did they do to get there? What do they understand that I don't understand? And so that's really kind of what guided me. But my black and white, I had to look at numbers, right? So I had to say, hey, if I can't go out, I'm sorry. I remember my friend one time, like we were just so upset because we did not go on this trip one time because we didn't have the money for it. And so we were just like, we felt broke. And I was just like, yo, I don't know how we feel so broke all the time. I remember in college, when people got their refund check, I was like, yo, people are just richer than me because here people are getting laptops, getting North Faces, again, this isn't like
balling, just
their finances, but I was just like, I felt so broke because I was like, I can't get those things, not realizing that those people are just going into more debt, right? I didn't understand that, but that's because my mother didn't really guide me with debt. Like she didn't have a credit card until like 5 years ago. So while I grew up on layaway, I never really grew up on debt. So I didn't even understand like you can afford quote unquote certain things, but you don't like have the money for it because that's not how I was raised. And so when I got to college and people here are like, buying things, I didn't understand that. I thought everybody had more money than me because I thought that everybody had they were able to afford it. So I think that that was actually helpful for me in hindsight. Really understanding now what debt is and what being able to afford things are and how I approach that.
It's funny because I think everyone who went to college, I know Lawrence can confirm this as well, is the refund checks kind of got a lot of people into this whole haze a bit, thinking that they were getting a lot of money, but not realize those actually student loans they were taking out. So again, if our audience not familiar with refund, what Angel is saying is that this is the difference between, your tuition, your rewards money, your financial aid, minus any, amount of tuition that you owe, or your books, your housing for the semester. That's what you get at the end of your semester. It's this refund, the net amount. And I used to think the same thing too. I'm like, oh, why everyone has a car, and I got myself in more debt because I took out the loan and purchased a car. Although my tuition and everything is covered for the semester. Like I felt left out before they had the term FOMO. I was in deep FOMO, and that put a lot of financial strain on myself than it should have been.
I think a lot of us were in the same situation because I don't think we talk enough about financial packages and understanding what that is. Because to your point, it's the word that we don't get. That financial package is it's not just the awards or grants that you might receive, or the financial the others private grants that you might receive, awards, so on and so forth. It's also tacked on a whole bunch of loans for some people as well. And the more and more that you use up the grants, the refundable or non-refundable like awards, whatever those may be, you end up in the other category of all loans. So those things that people are getting as a refund check, a net check, whatever that is all pretty much loans that we use to indulge. People were living, like to this day in Tallahassee now, there's people renting apartments, studio apartments for $2,500 a month in Tallahassee.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
In Tallahassee, like overlooking whatever they're overlooking. It's just, we're it's odd that we just kind of let people do this, especially parents. Maybe the parents don't even know that's what's going on, or they're not as like completely in tune with how do you explain to your kid that, hey, having spending $2,000 per month in the studio apartment doing college is not a good look.
But they're not familiar. I can speak for being alumni from Florida A&M University. FAMU is majority of the students, or the population of the students, are first generation college students. So their family or whomever who encouraged them to go to school are not familiar. I was one of those students. So my mom couldn't walk me through a financial aid package, right? And I'm thankful I had other people around me that can speak about what's a financial aid package, how does it work, and such. But although my tuition and my books, everything was covered, no one taught me about the livelihood. How do you live? Personal care products, how do you transportation, all that other good stuff. Like, and that is I guess the disconnection that is missed with many parents. And I can't really speak for other, parents who may speak about, to their children or incoming, college students to say that, hey, you have to live. How does that look like? How much money would I have to send out to you? Like, what do you need? Right. Or what they call it, parents will have to sort of kind of give their children all the essentials, because that's what you need when you think about it. When everything is covered, like you got your transportation, the housing, everything is covered. You just need just essentials, to get by. But a lot of people don't even have that, So it's one of those things where, lack of guidance. I can speak for myself, lack of guidance. But, when you are the first of a lot of things, you make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, very true. And I can say for me, that was one of my biggest things. I actually got kicked out of college, the first college I went to, an academic.
Oh, speak about that.
Yeah.
If you want to share.
Oh shoot! No, I was like, oh, that cut deep.
Yeah, you know what?
What happened?
Really, that's like what happened, Angel. Yeah, that really, I should say, is the real.
It woke you up. It woke you up.
Yeah, not for real. That truly is the beginning. Really, really of so how Lovely had asked me before of my personal financial journey. So. I had too much. It wasn't like I had too much fun. I kind of I was one of those people where it was like, okay, and this is not like to toot my horn. It simply was when you do really well in high school and you don't put enough effort, like it's just easy. High school is easy for you. And so you get to college and you're like, no, you really have to do work. You have to put in all your assignments, and not just easily, right? Like you're doing work that differently you didn't have to before. And I think that for me, I was like, well, what's the point of me doing all this work? Again, because I was like, I don't want to. And I think it was kind of like a psychological, hey, Angel, what's the point of all this? Philosophical, why am I doing this? That kind of led me to this. But anyway, I got kicked out. Huge shame to my parents.
Jamaican parents at that. Ooh.
Girl, but it was rough. So it was a very rough time for me in my life. Luckily, we have a great relationship now, but it was very tough. I ended up sleeping on my friend's couch after that. My friends were basically feeding me through meal plans, left my house. And so I was like, you know what? All I know is that with what I still want to do, I know I have to get a college degree. But I also said, I'm not going to take out another loan for school. That's one thing I promised myself, because I was just like, I'm not going to do it. I didn't really know why I was so against student loans at that point. But I was like, I don't want to take out more student loans. It might have been because here I was not graduating from college, not even in school, and I still owe the school. And I was like, I can't do this again, right? I can't end up owing the school again. And what if something happens again, right? So I was like, I need to be able to pay for it. And that's how I found my way to going to the Air National Guard. And because New Jersey's Air National Guard, they cover the cost of tuition for any public college. And they also give you a stipend during the time. So again, my choice of the Air National Guard was a strategic one. That was one where I was like, well, how do I pay for school if I don't make a lot of money right now. How else am I going to pay for school? And so I chose the Air National Guard for that reason.
Okay, so you continue your education with the Air National Guard, or?
Yeah, so while I was still in the Air National Guard, because it's 1 week in a month and then 2 weeks a year, I was able to go to school full time when I returned from training.
Awesome.
Yeah, I made the bad decision of joining the Marine Corps
Before?
as a Marine Corps Reserve. Like, it's the same thing. Like, it's basically she joined the Air Force version of the Reserve. So the Army version of the Reserve is also the Army National Guard. It is. So their Air Force have their own version. It's called the Air Force National Guard, and it's primarily for every different state or sometimes municipality. But ultimately, this was a good opportunity because it does pay for your schooling, and it also gives you a stipend based on the change that they had post 9/11. So that was actually really good.
Anjel, are you the first generation college graduate?
So no, my father went to the University of West Indies in Jamaica.
But here in the U.S., you're first generation.
Oh yeah, I'm the first in the U.S.
Okay.
I'm the first generation American. Yes, I am.
You know, I think you brought up something super important because a lot of, I guess I want to say a lot of Black people, maybe it's just like generalizing, a lot of Black students, the way we matriculate from middle school through high school, depending if you were successful at it, and then you just thrust into college, majority of the time, it was just blind. It was very exploratory. You're at that age and that stage where you're technically an adult, but for some reason they call them young adults now. You're really an adult, but you're making a lot of like maybe joyful decisions. Like you're packing your time with a lot of social interactions because you're trying to develop the person, right? The person that you're going to be, how you're going to maintain yourself, how you're going to grow, where you're going to, we're basically kind of aimless. And then we fall into a problem of staying into college longer or actually dropping out of college as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
that was all me. Yeah, definitely.
And, like, I remember there were like the 6-year college students, 7-year college students when I
I was
college. Right. And unfortunately, a lot of times those were like young men, at least in my experience at my school. Right. And the women, they always like graduated. Right. The women, but in my school, there were a lot of guys that, would be like the 6th year, but they also would be in different majors. Right. Where some harder and some like other programs. Right. People had to change careers. I think that or change majors. I think that people assume that college is always going to be the fix to it, right? But it's really how you apply yourself in college, but not only like academically, but what you want to do, right? And there's no knock to anyone's major, but if you're going to college and you're getting like just a design degree, but you don't understand, right, the return of your investment for that degree, then there's a huge shock to you. And I was like avoiding that shock because I was like, okay, if I graduate college, like what am I going to do? Because I'm still seeing people graduate college, at least from me and my point of view, that aren't in lifestyles that I want. Right. So for me, it was really like, okay, well, unless you become a lawyer, a doctor, right, a nurse, maybe like those vocational, right, careers or professional vocations, then how do you really navigate? I didn't really understand the corporate world at the time. I didn't know about management consulting at the time. And so it was like, yeah, I'll graduate, but I'll still be making like $30,000, $40,000 a year. And that at the time did not seem worth it to me. And so I kind of just like let it go. And I think for me, understanding the kind of salary that I could obtain, that's where I kind of got a little better. And that's where the research came on. I was like, really, what's the minimum salary? And I looked up what are those jobs that pay that minimum salary, right out of college.
And I think for you, it really worked out because you kind of caught yourself early on, even though you stumbled, but you caught yourself early on and realized that the return on investment on a specific major or degree, how does that look like? How does that apply to a practical world, right? I think for a lot of Black students, boy or girl, whichever household you come from, or even your background, when you are coming into college. For me, the shock, because I took dual enrollment and took college courses while I was in school, a few college courses. I always realized you have so much time, and we fill that time, like Lauren said, with social activities. I got my work done, but a lot of times it was at the nick of the hour. I got it done, but it wasn't the best quality. I kind of just I got by, right? Or sometimes I thrive and stuff when I focus. And I think for a lot of my experiences was just shooting aimlessly to whatever that sticks, And when you have a lack of guidance, that really hurts you, because you're just moving to see, okay, this may sit, this may work, without realizing those decisions have a long-term impact. I still have some of my student loans from undergrad. So these things really matter. But I always say, and I was telling this friend a while ago about this, is that I don't think it's really a lack of guidance, but it's just that we're very persistent people in a persistent culture. We have all these things inherently in us. It's just that we don't have more or less the representations of how people can actually help us and lead, right? But it's up to us. Now we have experienced this. I could tell my nieces, my nephew, my future children about preventing them making the mistakes that I have made, because I didn't have that knowledge. I can teach from a level of experience and understand how the dynamics and environments is totally different for college students. And you have to be prepared. You just have to, because, when you're going into it, they want to have you go and get, these college degrees, not realizing what's the real return on investment. And I had to enter in more debt because my undergrad wasn't paying that much. And it took me to get a master's to get the much money that I want to make.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And you had spoken about it, like that guidance. And I think that falls into even as we're adults, right? So we did what we're supposed to do, right? We went to college, we got our degree, we got the job, and then now what? Right. And I think that at least for me, we don't have enough, I don't think that we have enough guidance in our communities for at least in a one-to-one perspective, or to really see people who are doing the things that we want to do outside of, I would say, I don't want to say what's flashy, but what's really publicized, right? So if I'm looking for, hey, I just want to have a comfortable life and travel when I want to and do the things that I want to, who can I look to that has that kind of lifestyle, right? And that starts from even seeing it in college, and then seeing it after college, and now seeing it as a mid-30s millennial, and so I think that's, especially for the Black community and the professional Black community, it's really that lineup of where we get that guidance from. And so that's why also I'm happy to do personal finance, because I was okay, well, if I don't have that guidance, then how can I create and become that guidance for even people that are older than me, younger than me, same age as me?
Yeah, there's so much there that it feels like we could go into a whole other podcast episode about it, because I think talking about the college experience could really shape and form in the future how much money you're making, and also how fast you are building wealth. So I remember the McKinsey and Company report in 2019, I think it was issued in 2020, where they talked about the economic state of Black America. And one of the most important facets of it is that majority of the jobs that were occupied by Black and brown people, specifically Black people, were in the service industry, making less than $50,000 a year. We were pretty much a good 60-70% of us are in that space, versus if we actually, I guess, had better understanding and clairvoyance, such as yourself, throughout the college era, we probably could have pivoted into careers that could have yielded us more. And on top of that, I think another part of the problem is that there's this massive social pressure to go to college and get it done quick, or get it done, right? It's hey, go to college, finish it in 4 years, but somewhere in between, maybe you need to get a break. Maybe you do need that wake-up call that you need some time to adjust and understand what you need to do. And I think I've seen other people take the gap years, where they're really figuring things out in order for them to get into a better trajectory. And then maybe that is something that we need to consider, gap moments gap summers where, young Black professionals, especially Black men, really get a chance to maybe test out some of those work habits, or maybe even figure out, is this something I really want to do, instead of just pouring more and more time and energy into carrying the majority of the debt that we have in student loans.
Yeah,
I said a lot of stuff.
No, I think that I had a forced gap season, right? Like getting kicked out was like my forced gap time. But it honestly let me reflect on like what I wanted, how I was going to get there, rather than just going to college and doing and performing. And then also understanding those numbers, right? Like when you're in college, your goal is to go to class, do well in class, graduate, right? But you're not understanding, okay, well, what majors also, because everybody's telling you to do what you love, right? And the people that say to do what you love, those are most times, these are the people who found success in making money and at the same time doing what they love, right? And not everybody is doing that. Like I'm not going to be listening to the speakers like Oprah, right? Like, sorry, but when people like Oprah are saying, yes, do what you love, understand at the same time, Oprah is obsessed with what she does, right? And unless you have that type of obsession, unless you're going to give that type of effort constantly, you can't expect to get like Oprah results, right? And part of it is luck too. You know what I mean? There were unlucky things that happened to her, and then there were super lucky things that happened to her. So we can't compare to say, just do what you love, but also understand what makes sense. Because if we are like going into industries that make less than like 50,000, and even if we're graduating and still going into the industries, people are going to believe that, okay, the college isn't the best for everyone. But at the end of the day, still, and tides are turning a little bit. And so I like that, right? It doesn't necessarily you don't need a degree to really even get into certain jobs. And I personally like that. But at the time, like when I was graduating, you needed at least the 4-year degree to get into really any starting industry that you wanted to. And I think that it does take a lot for people to understand themselves a little bit more, but to also understand, right, the industry, to understand, right, what's going on outside of just your little like cocoon of college, right? Because when you graduate, that's what happens. My sister-in-law, she graduated around like 2008, right? And that was the Great Recession. And she told me how difficult it was to get a job, right? And you go to college. So she was forced to then get a graduate degree, because then that was the only thing that was going to help her at the time, because they were like, okay, like, I know, bachelor's degrees just weren't enough then at that point, right? So it's multifaceted and it's very vast. And I think that it's a lot of pressure on college students. And also a lot of pressure on those that are guiding college students, because, we may not know everything. And so it's just, you have to look at it from a wide lens, I think, not only just from your career, but also monetarily, right? You're going to college to also make a living for yourself.
And this is probably going to be the hard question. Well, go ahead, Alana. Go ahead.
It's going to be the hard question.
Yeah, I'm about to hit her with a hard question real quick.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, the question is, okay, so now that we're seeing the problem forming and developing, right? We have a lot of people going to this college experience kind of blindly, making mistakes. A lot of us have made those mistakes, and if you're listening and you made some mistakes, you're in good company, because a lot of us still made it through. Because it's not you're not defined by the mistakes that you made in the past. You're only defined by where you're going to go, right? What you're going to do after that. On top of that, now we do have a state in which, especially young Black millennials, especially your target demographic, are struggling with the ideal of building wealth. We have the median white net worth as of 2019 was 187,000. The Hispanic median net worth was 37,000. And you have the overall Black net worth being 14,100. Can you kind of, because I don't know if people understand what net worth is versus what they're in their bank checking accounts. Can you explain that a little bit? And where do you think this is coming from? And how do you think you can solve this? Yeah, this is the hard question.
No, I absolutely. So first thing, where it's coming from and these statistics, the first and foremost thing is home ownership, right? That's the first thing overall of the median white net worth is that overall, they have higher home ownership rates than Black and Hispanics as well. And so the thing about home ownership, a lot of times that homes are passed down. Families that can afford to do this and are more well off will pay off the down payment for certain homes, right? So some people don't have the responsibility of paying down their down payment. So home ownership really is that first kind of paired net worth. And so when we're looking at net worth, we're not only just looking at what's in your bank account, but we're looking at all your assets across the board. So the homes that you own, right? Of course, what's in your bank account, your brokerage accounts. So things such as 401ks, right? A lot of people, Black Americans also do not, similar to like median rates and home ownership, we don't put into 401ks, even when we also have, considering all things the same across, when we have similar jobs, we also don't contribute at the same rate than our white counterparts do to things like 401ks. And so I think that the first thing is really that those demographics, white demographics, and specifically like white males, they were afforded historically more opportunities to build wealth. And so what we're seeing now is we're seeing the symptoms of those policies, right? It's not just simply that we don't only have the jobs. That's also true. We may not have the income because we don't have the professional jobs, right? Comparative to whites or white males, because we have the college education, but we don't get the jobs. We don't have the jobs, but we also don't have the inheritances that they do as well, right? And so that's just a symptom of the history. And people don't really look at that a lot, right? They think it's just, they want to look at just snapshots of current trends or snapshots of current statistics. But you have to look at how were they able to afford these things? When you look at things like the GI Bill, which I used, right? And Lawrence, as you were in the Marines, I'm assuming or guessing that you used.
Oh, no. The Marine Corps is, let's not talk about how broke the Marine Corps is.
Okay, so you didn't use the GI.
They give us something, but it's not as beneficial as you might think it is.
Okay, yeah. I used the GI Bill, but before, right, Black veterans weren't afforded to use the GI Bill. Only white veterans were. And so with that, right, they were able to go to college or, like the FHA before, right? They actually blocked out Black homeowners to get beneficial or, lower rates, mortgage rates, right? Things like redlining, those things we're still understanding and we're still feeling the effects of those policies. So that's really where it comes down to if you're looking at like the baseline of it. Now, if you want to look at like habits, sure, we have different habits than other demographics. But if we want to look at, okay, so how are people building that generational wealth to have that net worth? Because it's not by yourself, right? If my family is putting down the down payment on my house, of course I'm going to have more money to do other things with, like invest. But if I have to do it by myself, then, right, I'm not going to be granted that opportunity.
Yeah, it's a combination. I think you thoroughly went through that because the problem is not just the income that we bring in. We're also carrying a lot of debt from the student loan side. So a lot of people, especially first generations, we technically had to take a lot of some debt or even a lot of debt if you're trying to get the post-secondary degrees because you didn't come from money. So you didn't come from your parents giving you an inheritance or your grandparents passing away, giving this, that, and the third, or even some parents literally give their kids a home because grandma died and hey, that house over there is not yours. Like what? So these are stark opportunities that might exist for other people that don't necessarily exist readily for a lot of Black and brown people. So that's something that to be said about that. On top of the fact that now you do also have to socially find somebody just like you to build a family with and also kind of grow. All of that is we're dealing with a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And I think that like it's so much that it's kind of like if we want to focus so much on what's wrong, I think it's important to learn about what's wrong. And then it's kind of like, okay, then what? Right. So if that is what's wrong and what's happening right now, that whole statistic years ago that said like, okay, the Black net worth is going to reach zero by like 2053, right? That's a problem. But then what can I do so that like isn't my story, and what can I do so that isn't like those around me, their story as well, right? So for me, I'm like, all right, so if I know that that is what's true and that's what people say statistically, am I just going to be mad about it, or am I going to try and do something about it? You know? And so I'm not in the business of changing. I'm not in the business of politics or policies. And I can say there are people that are doing great work for that, but I know what I can do for my household. And I know what I can do for my network, right? And the people around me. So I talk to coworkers, I talk to friends. I have these conversations where it's like, yo, like, let's not be part of that statistic, and do everything that you can so that you're also sharing with others so that it doesn't become true. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want that to happen. I don't want it to be 2053. And I'm like, yep, they told us 30 years ago this shit was going to happen. And look, it happened.
Yeah. And I thank you for actually bringing up the concept of ownership as a form of wealth, because it's very important. It's not there's a couple of things that are almost caveats to wealth. You kind of have to do them in some way, shape, or form. You got to get there, or it'll actually help you along the way. One being, get a quality education in a field, basically becoming knowledgeable enough to get into a field that can make you money. The second one is the field that makes you money. Is there any forward momentum? Because there's some fields you could get into making 50K and you're going to be making 50K for the rest of your life. There's some fields you start off making 60 and you end up making 150 by the end. So it depends on where you are and how that goes. Another piece, which I think is always in contention, especially in these spaces on social media nowadays, is relationships and people getting married. For some people, it might not be a thing that they want to do, but marriage itself affords opportunities, especially when it comes to down to taxes and other ways where you could also become, instead of being a single income family, now you end up being a dual income household, right? So there's a way that you could build more money at the same time within that one scenario. And then the next one is actually getting a home, which is a big conversation now, again, on social media, that for some reason people think renting makes you wealthy for some reason, which is odd. I'm like, yeah, there's some millionaires that they don't care to buy a home, but because they're millionaires, they're billionaires. They could do whatever they want with their money.
But I bet you they still own property though.
Yeah, they still own property.
I bet you they still own property. They may not live in it, but they own it.
And that's the wild part. It's not just they own property. Sometimes those people is telling you not to buy a home because grandma and grandpa are going to pass away and they're going to give them a home. Sometimes, like as a second or third generation wealth inheritor, you have different decision points that aren't necessarily available to everyone. Especially if maybe you don't know that it's going to happen, but for sure, mom and dad going to pass away and the family home is yours. So you buying a home is not as like this critical thing in the back of your mind because you've already had a home. But for me, like my mom never really had a home. Like, yeah, me buying a home was a big deal. It wasn't quote unquote the investment. It was literally, I need a roof over my head.
And I think like this conversation now, and you brought it up, like, cause I made a comment one time, I put a story about like, now why does everybody keep taking like shots at homeowners, right? And especially like millennial homeowners. And I think it's a trigger for some people because it's like, that was the path to wealth, but that was mainly the path to wealth for like white men or white people, right? And they didn't have the same circumstances that people of color had. So I think it was like, okay, so you guys are telling us that home ownership is the path to wealth, yet you don't start from the same place that we do. And so I understand that point of view, but I don't understand taking shots at people or at folk who want to own a home. Like, what if you just want to own a home because you want to own it? I can tell you right now, like, even personally, I wanted to own a home because I was like, let's be homeowners, right? That was the thing. I was tired of renting. For my husband, he does whatever he wants in his home, and it gives him peace to own this, to have this. Now, mind you, we still have a mortgage. So do we own the house outright? We don't. But to have it be his own, that he doesn't have to ask somebody to do something on his, in his home, that he can reconstruct it the way he wants to. He can be creative the way he wants to. That also is certain freedom, right? And so it gives you that like emotional freedom as well, not just only like, okay, this is only just finances. And I think that people aren't like understanding that just as much. If you're not looking to move every like 3 years, 4 years, and you want to build some roots somewhere, then it makes sense for you also to own something that's like, this is yours, right? And it's not just only, hey, own a home to invest in, yet that is a part of it. That's not the only part of it. And I don't think people are having that conversation as well. Like sometimes it's just because what I want to do, like I just want to have something that's mine.
Yeah, and I want to say this about the whole financial freedom part. It doesn't necessarily have to come down to the brass tacks of equity minus your mortgage. It could just be price fixing. So a lot of times when people are renting, like, hey, a year or 2 years from now, they could just raise the rent on you. Like my mortgage has been the same ever since I bought this place. It's been $1,000. That's it. It's always been $1,000. It's still $1,000. Where the mortgage of the places I used to rent, I used to be in a roommate in a 5-bedroom, 2-bath in the DMV. That was $1,000 by itself. And you know how much they're renting anything now in the DMV, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath is around like $2,700 per month. And you
Wow.
keep fixing. And I'm looking at people like, hey, bull face in their eye, and it's squinting at me in their eyes, like, yeah, renting is better than owning. Like, seriously, sir? Like, what extra? Oh, I could invest the difference. Invest what difference? Every year it goes up like 20-30%. I'm not too sure what the difference that you're investing.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if the argument is going to last very long. I just think that some people are just defending their choices, which they don't have to do, right? You shouldn't have to defend your choices, but if you look at it, if you want to really understand like building wealth, let's really talk about it historically. Owning property, having your own, not having to deal with, right, renting going up, things of such, that's going to actually, over the long term, build your wealth more. There was this post this woman just made about why Beyonce and Jay-Z, why did they take out a mortgage on a $800 million home, right? And people are like, well, they can afford it. Why don't they just buy a cheaper home? And when you look at the numbers, right, you look at how much their mortgage rate is versus them actually having that capital to then invest and get a greater return, then you're like, okay, it makes sense, right? Again, I don't have Beyonce, Jay-Z money, so I'm not too concerned about their pockets like that. But if you want to compare that to your own life, then do it that way, right? But if you're like, well, I don't want to spend the money, you're spending money either way. But at least at the end of the day, something is yours, right? And you're
spending, some people's like, I don't want to pay a mortgage. You're paying somebody else's mortgage.
Yeah, like you're spending the money either way. Like
it might not be your mortgage, but you're paying somebody else's mortgage. That's for sure.
It's gonna get spent. Like that's it. It's gonna get spent, sir.
Nah, thanks a lot for like really opening up this conversation, not just from I guess we could have easily went down the path of just talking about wealth building and all the nuances there, but I love the idea of getting to know people, their stories, and really hopefully connecting with some of the audience members that might have went to a situation where they weren't doing so hot in college. I know I didn't do so hot. I barely graduated the first time with like 2.7. And I didn't really finish the second time with my grad school. So I'm not a perfect student by any form, but yet I'm still in this space building wealth and I'm still moving forward. And I think a lot of people could benefit from knowing that it's not over. It's not over until it's over. You could still pivot. You could still make changes.
It's a marathon, and I think that that's probably one of the most like relatable things is that like I didn't have the conventional way, right? Like I tried the conventional way and it didn't work for me. And I failed. Like that was really my biggest lesson. It was like I failed and I could still bounce back. And I think that for some people, like we're so stuck on like failing, but it's like you can still bounce back and change things to how you want them to be.
Yeah, so many great points and things that you drop about just your entire financial journey. But just one last question is, because I read a little bit of your Voyage magazine interview for the Houston. Yeah, so really good piece about your platform. But I want to talk about, or just a question about the goal of you want to work optional with you and your husband in terms of going into or completing coast firing by 2035.
Yeah, so I'll be quick with that. And so essentially, assuming your audience understands the FIRE movement, right? Financial independence, retire early. We've hit something called Coast Fire, and it's another variation of FIRE. And essentially what co-spire means is that we have enough invested currently. And for us, it's invested in the stock market as well as some REITs. But we have enough invested. So at the time that when we reach conventional retirement age of 65, currently we don't need to invest anymore because we will have enough retirement savings from what our retirement account value is today. So what it means is if my husband and I decided, hey, if we're going to retire at the age of 65, we actually don't need to invest a dollar anymore. Like we don't need to invest another dollar, and we still will have enough for retirement. And so that calculation, I actually have the calculation within one of my blog posts, but also you can Google the calculation. I can say it right now, but it's pointless unless you like write it down. So if you Google a co-spire calculator, it's easy. You just need to know what your years of growth is. And so for us, it's different for everyone. It depends on your age versus their retirement age. And then also what your estimated retirement spend is, right? So how much you anticipate spending during your retirement age. So those are two big numbers that really important to that. And so for us hitting co-spire, it kind of gave us like a little peace of mind because right now, especially like currently in our economic market, there are some people that don't have retirement savings, right? And so they're leaning upon Social Security, and Social Security doesn't like cover, I believe, enough for like living wage, even for those who are retired. And then when they say that me and my age and my demographic will retire, we may not actually have any Social Security available. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's scary enough for me to know, hey, I need a retirement savings. And so we went kind of hard after we paid off our debt. We went really hard in contributing to our 401ks. Both our companies had matches. And so we exceeded the match. We actually maxed out for the first time, like 2 years ago, because we got married 3 years ago. So 2 years ago, we maxed out for the first time. And since then, we've continued to max out. And so co-spire is really just another way of just, for us, we're still investing, but it's like, okay, we at least know we don't really have to worry about when that time comes, what we're going to do because that money is already invested.
As a person that understands everything she just said, it sounds like a lot, but it's not as like difficult once you start on the journey. It's just one of those things that you have to get into form and function with doing, like day in, day out, to listen to it. Because she talked about FIRE, which is the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, and a subsect of that being co-spire, which is the idea that once you invested a certain amount, it can grow to the point where you don't really need to invest anymore following that moment in order for you to retire in the future. So there's a lot there. We definitely going to break that down for you guys in the show notes. And wow, it was an amazing conversation with you, Anjel. It was actually stupendous. And it's not Anjel, it's Angel. And I keep saying Anjel because I want to say it in the Caribbean way. I was
just about to say that. It's only like Caribbean people that say it like a certain way. Like my friend, she's Dominican, and she always says Anjel. And that's how she said, and I'm like, I accept that and I receive that because I know.
I receive it. Like Jesus. Like Jesus is Jesus. You're like, what, Jesus?
I'm just saying, right? If you're going to say, if you understand how to pronounce it, but you're going to say it in the way, right, that culturally is how you would pronounce, I can rock with that as well. Like, mostly because like
you can rock with the Latin roots. It's Latin.
Yeah, I give grace to people of color.
In the
especially Caribbean.
But yeah, you talked a lot about this thing, and I'm happy that you came on as a guest, and I think a lot of people are going to take a lot of great nuggets from your interpretation of things, and how can they reach out to you? How can they connect with you on a one-on-one level, or even follow you?
Yeah, so the best way, I have my blog, RareBirdMoney.com. I'm also on Instagram at RareBird Money. But the best way is through email. I answer my emails. I am on social media, but truly, if you shoot me an email, you will most likely get back a response from me like within that same day. So I would absolutely suggest that anyone reach out to me through email, and it's rarebirdmoney@gmail.com. Those are sound effects.
Yeah, we can't afford them. That's the way we can't afford them.
We mentioned it before. It just can't be done. I really appreciate it. I was going to say, I pronouncing your name that way as well, Anjel, because that's the Haitian
Caribbean way.
Yeah, the Caribbean way. But I really appreciate you coming on. You dropped so much of knowledge and just insightful experiences about what made you or even motivate you to get to this point for financial journey. And you and your husband, doubling up on paying down debt and getting to the point of Coast Fire. Because I think people only understand or think that there's only one way, which is the extensive buyer movement, but there's multiple other ways to get to that point, so that's pretty cool that you guys have a goal together as a couple and a family. So I really like that a lot. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's going to be a great episode. I'm really excited to drop this. Anything else you want to share? Anything else that you're doing in the future with RareBird Money or?
Yeah. So recently I just presented in front of my company for generational wealth. And so doing that again. And so if you're in the Houston area, just look out for me because I'll be doing some local events in Houston. But I thank you guys so much for having me on. It's been an awesome time being able to talk to you about these things.
Hey, one more thing I was going to say is do you feel salty that your daughter or son, I think it was your daughter, right?
Just daughter. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you feel salty that she's going to be a millionaire? By the time she kind of get to that point where she realizes what it is, I'm a millionaire.
That's the goal.
I feel a little salty. If I have a kid, he's going to pop out, I'm a millionaire.
But here's the thing. She's not going to know until she's 18. My husband and I already discussed it.
Oh, nice. Yeah. You're going to make sure she struggles in life. All right.
We have money. She don't have no money.
Okay.
You got to make that clear.
Yeah. You don't have no money. We have money.
Yeah. You're staying here with grandma. I'm about to go travel.
Exactly. I mean, it's already happening now. But for real, no, I'm so excited for her to just not have, not even the responsibility, the stress of, I call it financial bondage. Right. And I just don't want that for her. I want her to be able to make choices freely without having to, be stressed to think about, about money. But she also has to be a hard worker. So that's why we don't want it. I don't want her to know. I don't want people don't know. My child shouldn't know that we have money because I want her to, know the value of hard work, and being productive, but also having joy, So yeah, but she's good. That's all I'll say. She's good.
Awesome.
She got to flex on all of us.
Right? When you think about all our children, it's going to be a little bit more comfortable.
Oh, yeah. They're going to be I've always been a millionaire. They're going to be on YouTube somewhere talking.
Then we got to come in with the asterisk. No, we were millionaires.
We're out here in the comment section. Who is you? Who's you?
Right?
I don't know
the
this
rich
man.
Kids.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a funny dad. I'm gonna put a meme in there living off my coattails, living on your dad's coattails. Gotta humble the person. He's like, hey, who are you? Calling in, Dad, is that you? Yeah, I hate you.
Well, once again, thank you, Anjel, for coming. This has been an incredible episode. You can find me on the IG streets at Atlanta_Elson and just anywhere. Like Lawrence mentioned earlier in the episode, we are very transparent co-hosts and we love to share knowledge and information. It's not always, transactional with us. We're not looking for a sale. We just want you to be the best wealth builder you can absolutely be and to avoid the actual statistics when it comes to Black wealth and net worth, right? So yeah, shoot out me a message or anything you want to go from there. What about you, LG?
Yeah, they could send the same message back to Atlanta. She's also my secretary, so thank you.
Low key, you never answer those messages. I'm serious. I'm like, when is God gonna answer this message? I'm like, oh my gosh.
Nah, she's actually not my secretary. I just wanted to make that joke. You can find me on IG as the neighborhood finance guy. I personally don't think that finances need to be down, dreary, and kind of angry. I like to crack jokes about anything. That's why you're gonna find me because I'm enjoying this process. I'm enjoying the way that me and my wife are going about building on our wealth, and we definitely want the same joy for you. So this is why I love to crack jokes. So you can find me on the internet's cracking jokes. Never take it personal, but somebody I do.
I know. Well, thanks again for tuning in. TFG, we're out.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Griot podcast, powered by the Wealth Builders Collective.